time there was no books. Instead, he pushed his hands away, running a frustrated hand through his hair. I'm sorry, it's just, I don't know. I can't focus lately. Like it doesn't matter what I do or how much I try. My mind is just somewhere else. I nodded sympathetically, understanding the feeling well. It happens, I said, reaching out to touch his hand for a moment. He looked up then, meeting my gaze directly with a vulnerability that tugged at my heart. Do you ever feel like it's all pointless? Like nothing you do matters, and all you get for your efforts is disappointment and more work? I watched him for a moment, appreciating his honesty. There was no bravado there, no pretense. Just raw honesty that resonated with the lived experience of my own life. Yes, I said quietly, my voice betraying nothing of the storm of emotions that brewed within me. Oh, yeah. There's times when it feels like no matter what you do, it's never enough. Like the world is just going to keep piling on expectations until you break. He let out a shaky breath, then continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning, like there's too much pressure and I can't keep my head above water. I reached out again, squeezing his hand gently, willing him to look at me. In his eyes, I saw a reflection of my younger self, all those years ago when life felt heavy and the path ahead seemed dark and uncertain. The world can be hard, I agreed, my voice thick with emotion. But remember, it's not about whether the world is kind. It's about finding reasons to be kind anyway. He stared at me for a moment, and I knew he was grappling with the weight of those words. Then he looked down, his shoulders slumping slightly. But what if being kind is all you got? I couldn't help but smile at his words, despite the sadness that lay beneath them. Then that, I said, makes you all the more important, Jacob, because when the world has knocked you down and made you see how brutal it can be, and yet you still choose to be kind, then you truly understand what it means to be strong. He looked back at me, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before he slowly returned his gaze to the table. That sounds nice, he whispered, but it's hard. Being strong, I affirmed, placing my hand over his. Yes, being strong. It's terrifying sometimes, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. The hardest thing you'll ever learn, Jacob, is that it's okay to not be okay. To struggle, to stumble, to fall, and most importantly, to rise again each time. And in those moments when you think no one sees you, no one cares, know that you are seen. You may not hear it often, but you are loved and you are enough. His eyes welled up, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. He took a deep breath, composing himself. Thank you, he whispered. It means a lot to hear that. I smiled, touched by his vulnerability. Why do you care so much? He suddenly asked. About helping people when it seems like all you get is more problems. I thought about his question, savoring the sincerity in his voice. It's because I know what it's like to be lost, I finally answered, meeting his gaze directly. To feel alone in a crowd, to yearn for connection, to want to matter in a world that often feels indifferent. I see myself in you, Jacob. I see the kindness that shines through your actions, the empathy that colors your thoughts, and the strength that lies dormant within you. Your sensitivity is not a weakness. It's the wellspring from which your empathy flows. It allows you to connect with the world in a way that many others cannot. He remained silent, absorbing my words, and I allowed him to take his time. I knew that what I was saying might be a new perspective for him, one that could challenge the views he'd formed about himself. I want to tell you something, I said, sensing the shift in his demeanor. He looked up, his eyes questioning. My husband, he used to say that our greatest weakness could also be our greatest strength, that our sensitivity made us uniquely capable of understanding and connecting with the world. He believed that my soft-heartedness wasn't a flaw, but a superpower. And Jacob, I truly believe that. A single tear rolled down his cheek, and I reached out to brush it away. Don't ever let anyone convince you that being kind or caring or sensitive makes you weak. I said firmly, my voice echoing the conviction in my heart. You are stronger than you think, Jacob, and the world needs your strength. He nodded slowly, as if committing these words to memory, and I held his gaze, knowing that this moment was just the beginning of his journey towards understanding that he didn't have to be someone else to matter. He didn't have to harden his heart to survive. In fact, it was his sensitivity, his ability to feel deeply, that made him truly alive. And the world needed people like him, people who dared to be vulnerable in a world that often rewarded the opposite. We sat in silence for a while after that, and I knew that Jacob was processing my words, letting them sink in like seeds being planted in fertile ground. The room was filled with a quiet understanding, a shared acknowledgement of the challenges he faced and the strength he possessed to overcome them. The tension gradually eased from his shoulders and his breathing slowed. I could see the weight of the world lifting slightly from his eyes, and in that moment I felt a surge of hope. Hope that he would carry these words with him, that they would serve as a guiding light whenever he stumbled on his path. Hope that he would realize that his sensitivity wasn't a curse, but a blessing, a unique lens through which he could view and interact with the world. Eventually, I broke the silence. Would you like to hear a story, Jacob? He looked up, a hint of a smile gracing his lips. Sure, he said, his voice quieter now, but filled with a newfound resolve. And so I began to tell him the story of a young prince who was teased for his kindness in a cruel world, a story that taught him that being different wasn't a bad thing. It was what made him special. And as I spoke, I saw a glimmer of understanding dawn in Jacob's eyes. The story ended and the room was silent for a moment before he finally spoke. Thanks, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. For everything. I smiled, knowing that in that shared silence, a bond had been forged. A bond between a boy who struggled to find his place and the woman who saw the hero within him. We sat in silence for a few more minutes, and then he excused himself to go to the bathroom. As I watched him walk away, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. In the short time that Jacob had spent in my home, he had opened my eyes, reminding me of the importance of empathy, understanding, and the courage it takes to be kind in a world that often seemed intent on breaking his spirit. And I knew that this was just the beginning of his story. The world might try to push him down, but he had something worth fighting for, his sensitivity, his empathy, and the strength that lay dormant within him, waiting to be unleashed. And I would be here to support him every step of the way.